Hello and welcome to Spectrum News at 9. My name is Xavier Robert, coming to you live from Uyo, the capital city of Akwa Ibom. Let's take a look at the headlines. President Tinubu, Petroleum Minister Lopobiri review initiatives for productive petroleum sector. Federal government assures collaboration with other African countries to harness natural resources. Plus, Russia sanctions ICC prosecutor UK ministers. Details of these stories and more in a moment. First in the news tonight, a sequel to his deployment to the Ministry of Petroleum as the Honorable Minister of State for Petroleum, Senator Heineken Lopobiri today paid an official visit to President Bola Ahmed Tinubu as they reviewed the President's vision and initiatives for a more productive petroleum sector. The visit, which had the Honorable Minister of FCT in attendance, ex-Rivers Governor Nyesom Wike, was the first official visit between the duo as President Bola Tinubu talked the minister through his roadmap to a more profitable sector for the nation. Speaking afterwards, the Honorable Minister expressed happiness over what he described as proactive thinking on the part of the President for his initiatives to develop the nation's economic backbone with a view to strengthening the economy. Senator Heineken promised to offer the best of service in support of President Bola Ahmed Tinubu's developmental initiatives in the sector as he is hitting the ground running with immediate effect. Meanwhile, the Special Advisor to the President on Revenue, Adelabu Adedeji, says illicit financial flows, IFFs, unless checked, will continue to significantly erode domestic revenues, enable corruption and threaten economic stability as well as sustainable development. The presidential aide made this known in Abuja at a one-day hybrid sensitization workshop on the published guidelines for private sector response to illicit financial flows vulnerabilities in Nigeria. Adedeji said stemming illicit financial flows has recently topped global discussion given its negative impact on global development agenda, as well as the governance challenge it has generated through time. He added that Nigeria and other African continents continue to suffer various forms of IFFs, including tax evasion and other harmful tax practices, illegal export of foreign exchange, abusive transfer pricing, trade mispricing, misinvoicing of services, exploitation and under-invoicing of natural resources, organized crimes and corruption. Away from that now, the federal government has assured that Nigeria and other African countries will harness natural resources to boost development in the continent. The Permanent Secretary, Ministry of Mines and Steel Development, Mary Ogbe, stated this during the briefing of the diplomatic community ahead of the Africa Natural Resource and Energy Investment Summit, AFNIS 2023, scheduled to hold between 31st October and 2nd November this year. The event held at the Ministry of Foreign Affairs headquarters in Abuja. According to Ogbe, while speaking during the interactive and briefing session with the diplomatic corps, said the AFNIS Summit, which is an African knowledge-sharing platform initiated by the Nigerian government, will work with fellow African nations to continue the sustainable development of Africa's natural resources through knowledge-sharing, investment and trade. Meanwhile, the 144.8 billion naira Safe Schools initiative is expected to begin in 18 states, covering at least 48 schools in each state this year. The national coordinator of the Safe Schools initiative under the Federal Ministry of Finance, Budget and National Planning, Halima Iliya, disclosed this during a press briefing. Iliya said that the state government may also budget for the Safe Schools initiative from next year to support the federal government. The national coordinator noted that schools in the country have struggled with persistent attacks by extremists, bandits and kidnappers, which compelled the government to launch the Safe Schools initiative. She added that the plan is to cover 50% of most of the public schools at risk of attacks over the medium term. In the meantime, the documentation of the newly appointed ministers will begin on Saturday, August 19. The exercise is expected to end on Sunday, August 20. This is contained in a statement by the Permanent Secretary, General Services Office of the Secretary to the Federation, Namdi Mbairi. The statement listed the documents required for documentation to include curriculum vitae, birth certificate, declaration of age, and 2 passport photographs. It further stated that each minister designate is to provide the names of their 3 guests during the documentation process for access to the venue. In a separate development, the United Nations Children's Fund representative in Nigeria has urged the federal and state governments to enhance their judicial systems to ensure proper prosecution of bandits for their various crimes before the courts of law. Christian Munduate was addressing newsmen in Maiduguri today, preparatory to the commemoration of World Humanitarian Day, Saturday, August 19. Munduate lamented the absence of proper prosecution and punishment for bandits for the various crimes they perpetrate against humanity. From the Green Chambers now, where the chairman of the ad hoc committee of the House of Representatives investigating job racketeering in federal agencies, Yusuf Adamu Gagdi, has clarified that neither the registrar of the Joint Admission and Matriculations Board, JAMB, Professor Ishaq Oloyede, nor any agency has been indicted by the committee. Gagdi said it was wrong to insinuate that the committee had indicted the JAMB registrar when it was still carrying out its assignment. There have been reports in the media that the committee indicted the JAMB registrar for employing about 300 staff without advertisement. Speaking at the resumed hearing of the committee, Gagdi said the committee has been having a robust engagement with all agencies appearing before it. He said until the committee concludes its assignment and submits a report to the House, it cannot be said that it has indicted any agency for any wrongdoing. On judicial matters now, the Court of Appeal in Abuja today dismissed an appeal brought before it by Senator Smart Adeyemi seeking to nullify the primary election of the All Progressives Congress APC in Kogi State, which produced Usman Ododo as the party's flag bearer in the forthcoming November 11 governorship election. The court held that the appeal argued by Adekunle Oladapo Otitoju on behalf of Senator Adeyemi was completely bereft of merit and was thrown out. In a unanimous judgment of a 3-man panel, the court ruled that Adeyemi, who recently represented Kogi West Senatorial District, failed woefully to establish all grievous criminal allegations made against the conduct of the primary election by APC and its leaders. Justice Mohammed Lawal Shuaib, who delivered the lead judgment, resolved all 3 issues in dispute against Adeyemi. Justice Shuaib said the allegations of manipulations and falsifications of the primary election results made by Adeyemi, being criminal in nature, ought to have been proved beyond a reasonable doubt as required by law. On subsidy matters now, the organised labour has criticised the federal government for releasing a 180 billion naira palliative package to states to cushion the impact of the fuel subsidy removal. The Nigeria Labour Congress NLC and the Trade Union Congress TUC insisted that the governors could not be trusted, noting that politicians and not the poor would benefit from the 5 billion naira largesse given to each state government for disbursement to the citizens. Recall that the federal government yesterday announced a 5 billion naira palliative for each state of the federation and 180 trucks of rice as part of measures to assuage the pains of the subsidy removal. Meanwhile, the Borno State Governor Babagana Zulum disclosed that the 5 billion naira was to enable the state governments procure 100,000 bags of rice, 40,000 bags of maize, and fertilizers to cushion the effects of food shortage across the country. In another development, the FCT commander of the National Drug Law Enforcement Agency NDLEA, Kabe Sakuwa, has assured that the agency will continue to clamp down on all sources of illicit substances in the territory. Sakuwa stated that the command and all the security agencies have been engaging in joint operations to get rid of shanties, including black spots notorious for drug dealing in the FCT, and free the people from the activities of those in such illicit businesses. According to him, the raids would continue until drug merchants were pushed out of business in the Federal Capital Territory FCT, saying that it was part of the agency's strategic plan for drug supply and demand reduction in the area. He added that there would be continuous intelligence gathering in collaboration with other security agencies. Moving on now to education, where the National Youth Service Corps NYSC today warned Corps members against indecent dressing and disrespect to the Corps uniforms. NYSC Adamawa Coordinator Jinji Dennis gave the warning at the swearing-in ceremony of 2023 Batch B Stream 2 orientation course in Damare Camp, Jiray local government in Adamawa. He said anyone caught would be sanctioned appropriately. He urged them to be serious and actively participate in all the camp programs and activities. In his remarks, Governor Amadou Fintiri congratulated the Corps members for a successful graduation and deployment to Adamawa. Fintiri, who was represented by his Chief of Staff, Dr. Edgar Imus, called on Corps members to understand that white-collar jobs were not readily available. In another development, Oyo State Government has approved immediate release of a car loan for primary school teachers across all zones in the state. This is contained in a statement made available to newsmen today in Ibadan by the Coordinating Director, Oyo State Universal Basic Education Board, Jacob Dairo. According to him, the loan is coming as a palliative to the teachers. The Coordinating Director advised the beneficiaries to use the loan for the intended purpose. He said the facility, which is to be granted by financial institutions, is to be redeemed within 40 months. Back here, a Nigerian book enthusiast and member of the Uyo Book Club, John Obot, is set to officially attempt the World Guinness record for the longest reading aloud marathon by an individual termed a readathon. Speaking with Spectrum Television, Obot, who intends to read 40 selected Nigerian and foreign books for a period of 145 hours, said the aim is to promote reading culture in youths and also encourage others in their writing professions. The reader, while assuring that the marathon will be an interesting and exciting experience, appreciated the management of Spectrum Television for their support and commitment towards the important project in ensuring that the attempt comes out successful and Nigeria is put on the world map yet again. The reading marathon is scheduled to hold from September 9 through 15, 2023 at the Nelson Mandela Hall, Wadbridge Hotels and Suites, IBB Avenue, opposite Ibom Hall, Uyo, Akwa Ibom State. It will also be streamed live on Facebook, Instagram and Twitter at John Obot Reads Aloud. Recall that the records were previously held by Deepak Bajan from Nepal in 2008, who read 17 books for 113 hours, 15 minutes. Olubayode Olawumi from Nigeria in 2018. He read 23 published books for the period of 122 hours and currently raised by Isakov from Kazakhstan in 2022, who spent 124 hours reading different books in Bursa, Turkey. Still to come in the news. Oil prices drop after 7 weeks of gains. To stay with us.
Spectrum TV, broadening your horizon.
Business exists only to meet the needs of the people. But there's an extra advantage if your product and services are pitched on a platform that gives you the added advantage over your competitors. For your desired return on investment and so much more, advertise on Spectrum Television, on StarTimes DTH Channel 421 and on free-to-air with a frequency of 12733. Spectrum Television, broadening your horizon.
Nigerian police, which is the only one allowed by grossly abused. Our governors have to share police powers with the president as stipulated by the constitution. We do not have a federal government police force. We have the Nigeria Police Force, which shall be administered, organized, and supervised by the Nigerian police.
No, my lord, I want to say something. I want to say something here. Perhaps it might also enlarge the scope of people who should be invited here for examination. My lord, if we cannot find those who literally murdered Abiola, who are those people who could be said to be the beneficiaries of the death of Abiola?
Rogers has linked you with some of the killings he did.
He never did.
He linked you with the attempted murder of Hebrew.
He did not.
My lord, the Matters Council is leading the evidence in our matters.
Is this an adversary proceeding?
It's not, my lord, but you can't be talking about cases which are in court,
Is
my
this
lord.
an adversary proceeding?
It's not, my lord. These cases are in court, my lord. I'm just reminding your lordship.
My lord, sorry, my lord, I think I'll be in cross-examination.
Legally Speaking, a program that deals with legal issues and questions we face as citizens of this amazing country, Nigeria. Legally Speaking. Join us every
Friday from 5 p.m. to 6 p.m.
for Legally Speaking.
Every society is premised on the quality of relationships forged by its inhabitants. The health of these relationships determines how well people, relationships, organizations thrive and how long they stick together. Join Uyai Anyekan on Connect every Wednesday from 6 p.m. to 6:30 p.m. and on Sunday 2:30 to 3 p.m. on channel 421 on StarTimes to catch all the conversations, interviews, real stories and how to navigate relationships and family life in the 21st century. Real people, real faces, real stories. Connect live on Spectrum Television.
One truth not often told is about the transformation that Africa has undergone in recent decades. Africa is shaping its own destiny and should be referred to as the African opportunity. On Spotlight Africa, we paint the African picture the African way, laced with truth, detail, and the color of the African continent. Join Uyai Anyekan every Tuesday and Thursdays at 4:30 p.m. Spotlight Africa, telling the African story.
Spectrum TV, broadening your horizon.
Many thanks for staying tuned. As we move on now to Africa, where Kenyan authorities have banned 5 churches, including that of a suspected cult leader accused of inciting more than 400 of his followers to starve themselves to death. The Registrar of Societies said in a gazette notice that the license of self-proclaimed Pastor Paul Nthenge Mackenzie's Good News International Ministries was cancelled effective May 19. Mackenzie is alleged to have incited his followers to starve to death in order to meet Jesus in a case that has deeply shocked Kenyans. According to official autopsies, while starvation appears to be the main cause of death, some of the victims, including children, were strangled, beaten or suffocated. Authorities also banned 4 other churches, including the New Life Prayer Center and church headed by flamboyant televangelist Ezekiel Odero, who has been linked to Mackenzie. Still in Africa, Ghana's military has been forced to deny that West African generals marched into a meeting about the crisis in Niger to the theme tune of TV series Games of Thrones, after a faked video circulated online. The doctored clip was broadcast by the Ghanaian channel UTV on social media, but later taken down. According to representatives of the Ghanaian army, no such songs were played during Thursday's Guard of Honor parade in Accra that opened a 2-day ECOWAS Conference. Regional defense chiefs are meeting there to finalize preparations for potential military action in Niger, where the democratically elected president was ousted last month in a coup. If diplomacy fails, ECOWAS has threatened to use force to restore constitutional rule in Niger. Meanwhile, there are worries that additional instability could deteriorate Niger's already precarious security situation. In the meantime, an alliance of 7 political parties in South Africa have signed a pact in a bid to unseat the governing African National Congress ANC in the 2024 election. The multi-party charter for South Africa said if they come to power, they would work together and allocate ministerial positions and parliamentary seats. The parties are also seeking to keep Julius Malema's Economic Freedom Fighters EFF party from being voted into power. The agreement, initiated by the main opposition Democratic Alliance DA party, comes as the country battles an ailing economy, corruption, unemployment, and an unprecedented energy crisis. In the meantime, a senior official in Ethiopia's northern Tigray region, Gebrehiwet Gebrezabgamba, has told newsmen that at least 1,400 people have starved to death since international food aid was suspended. Gebrezabgamba said the number of dead could be much higher. Recall that the UN World Food Programme and the US aid agency USAID halted food relief to the region several months ago because donations were being stolen. Tigray was hit by acute food shortages when a brutal conflict broke out in 2020 between the Ethiopian government and the Tigray People's Liberation Front. 6 million people were reportedly affected. And while the conflict ended last year with a peace deal brokered by the African Union. Elsewhere, Somalia's President Hassan Sheikh Mohamud has said a military offensive against Al-Shabaab aims to eliminate the Al-Qaeda-linked group in the next 5 months. Correspondents say a promise to eliminate the group is hugely optimistic, seeing as it has been around since the early 2000s, is deeply embedded in communities, and has adapted its tactics in the face of international military pressure. Yet thousands of government soldiers have been gathering in a town in central Somalia to take part in a new military campaign against the jihadists. Reports say during the first phase of the offensive, which began a year ago, the army and local clan-based militias managed to seize Sway's now-defunct Union of Islamic Courts, which controlled Mogadishu in 2006 before being forced out by Ethiopian forces. Still in Africa, at least 22 aid workers have been killed in South Sudan this year alone, according to the UN, who say it tops the list of its population are in dire need of humanitarian aid. The crisis has worsened because access has become harder and funding is lower. According to the 2023 Aid Worker Security Report, since the start of this year, there have been 40 attacks on aid workers in South Sudan, leaving 22 aid workers dead and 36 injured. The UN Acting Humanitarian Coordinator for South Sudan, Peter Van, now to the foreign scene, where China's President Xi Jinping has planned a state visit to South Africa next week on the sideline of the BRICS summit. The Chinese Foreign Ministry spokeswoman Hua Chunying made this known in a statement. The visit will be Xi's second international trip of 2023 after he traveled to Russia in March. The Chinese president previously visited South Africa in 2018 as he sought to enhance his country's diplomatic and economic ties in Africa. How to turn a loose club of nations accounting for a quarter of the global economy into a geopolitical force that can challenge the developed world's dominance. Russian President Vladimir Putin, who faces an international arrest warrant over alleged war crimes in Ukraine, will take part by video rather than attending in person. A total of 69 countries have been invited to the summit in South Africa, including all African states, and expansion is expected to be high on the agenda. Two Russian Il-38 information gathering aircrafts seen flying to and from the Sea of Japan and the East China Sea through the Tsushima Strait, which separates Japan and South Korea. The Russian Air Force activity came a day after Japan's defense ministry said that it saw Russian and Chinese naval ships crossing international waters between naval ships sailed through that particular area of the sea together and had expressed grave concern about their joint military activities in the sea and airspace surrounding the country in recent years, adding that they are intended as a show of force against Japan. To boost Kyiv's export of grain through Romania after Moscow broke off Denis Shmyhal to the Romanian capital, Bucharest, for talks with his Romanian counterpart Marcel Ciolasu. The two leaders discussed ways to ramp up the war-torn nation's key grain exports and improve infrastructure for transportation across river, rail, road, sea, including at border crossings. Meanwhile, Ukraine's economy is heavily. In a related development, the U.S. has given its approval for the Netherlands to deliver F-16 fighter jets to Ukraine. The Dutch defense minister said today, in a major gain for Kiev, even though the planes would not have an immediate impact on the almost 18-month war against Russia. Ukraine has long pleaded for the sophisticated fighter to give it a combat edge. It recently launched its counteroffensive against the Kremlin's forces without. Meanwhile, a British-American billionaire, oil tycoon and close ally of Russian businessman Roman Abramovich lost a legal bid today to overturn UK sanctions imposed on him over Russia's war in Ukraine. Eugene Zhidler, who was born in the former Soviet Union but moved to the U.S. in 1989 and later became a dual U.S.-UK citizen, the government's use of its beefed-up sanctions regime, which has been used. The U.S.-based Zhidler, who owns 2 private jets and a yacht, who was targeted for his board role at a mining firm with Russian interests as well as his ties to Abramovich. Still on the foreign scene now, Russia announced sanctions today opposed Moscow's offensive in Ukraine. Russia, which is not a member of the ICC, insists the warrant against Putin is void. It will be recalled that the ICC said in May it was undeterred after Russia put prosecutor Khan on a wanted list over his issuance of the arrest warrant. Reports say a total of 54 people have been added to Russia's sanctions list targeting British citizens. Elsewhere, lawyers for former U.S. President Donald Trump have requested an April 2026 trial date on the federal charges that he conspired to overturn the 2020 election long after next year's presidential vote. The request comes as lead prosecutor Jack Smith is pushing for a January 2 start date in the case, one of 4 criminal prosecutions that Trump is facing in the middle of his White House re-election campaign. Meanwhile, Judge Tanya Chutkan is set to decide the trial date. on August 28. In the meantime, a British nurse was found guilty today of murdering 7 newborn babies and trying to murder 6 others at the hospital neonatal unit where she worked, becoming the UK's most prolific killer of children. Lucy Ledby, aged 33, on trial since last October, was accused of injecting her young victims, who were either sick or born prematurely, with air, overfeeding them milk and poisoning them with insulin. The jury at Manchester Crown Court in Northern England reached all of its verdicts after deliberating for 22 days. Ledby was arrested following a string of baby deaths at the neonatal unit of the Countess of Chester Hospital in northwest England between June 2015 and June 2016. In the meantime, Lithuania today closed 2 of its 6 border checkpoints with Belarus in a move it announced earlier this month, citing the security risk posed by Russia's Wagner mercenary group. Reports say both Sumsko and Berenshos border checkpoints were shut at midnight. Reports say Lithuania-Belarus ties had been tense for years, but that they further deteriorated after the 2020 presidential elections in Belarus, widely slammed as rigged. Meanwhile, Belarus criticized the decision to close checkpoints, calling it far-fetched. Still on the foreign scene, President Joe Biden opened a historic summit with Japan and South Korea at Camp David today, focused on strengthening security and economic ties at a time of increasing concerns about North Korea's persistent nuclear threats and China's provocations in the Pacific. Addressing his fellow leaders at what he called the first standalone summit of the 3 nations, Yoon said, as the 3 appeared before reporters, that today will be remembered as a historic day where they established a firm institutional basis and commitments to the trilateral partnership. Meanwhile, the US, Japan, and South Korea have agreed to a new security pledge. And now it's time for the latest business and stock market stories. Here is Blessing Dixon.
Thank you, Xavier Robert. Good evening. It's another business day. My name is Blessing Dixon. In the news, energy market oil prices dropped after 7 weeks of gains. Oil prices are more than 2% lower this week, snapping a 7-week streak of gains, with WTI crude futures trading below $81 per barrel as China's weakening economy and fears of further U.S. interest rate hikes outweighed signs of tightening global supplies. Weaker than expected economic data and a deepening prop cut from the central bank failing to appease the market. Minutes of the Federal Reserve's July meeting also show that U.S. policymakers stressed upside risks to inflation that could warrant a prolonged period of restrictive monetary policy after OPEC majors Saudi Arabia and Russia curtailed supply. Nigeria is set to join the second phase of African Continental Free Trade Initiative, according to the Executive Secretary, National Working Committee, African Continental Free Trade Area, Nigeria, Segun Awolowo. The initiative is a product for export and import. Awolowo noted that Nigeria's commitment to the initiative is crucial in boosting the nation's economic growth, noting that the alliance will make Nigeria's economic weak, driven by worries over higher for longer interest rates and fresh credit risks in China. On Wall Street, the Dow was down, declined more than 1%, and overnight markets in China and Hong Kong lost 1% and 2%. Million shares in 5,893 deals, corresponding to a market value of 9.39 billion naira, were traded. The benchmark All-Share Index climbed 295 basis points to close at 64,743.96, point. This represents a one-week loss of 0.8 trillion naira. 122 listed equities participated in trading, ending with 18 gainers and 33 losers. John Holt led the gainers with 9.85% share price appreciation, closing at 1 naira 45 kobo per share. On the losing side, Guinea Insurance came out last with an end-of-day price depreciation volume of 243 million traded shares. This is all in business news, and back to Xavier Robert for the rest of the news.
Many thanks, Blessing. Still to come in the news. Sports again to begin talks for Oban. To stay with us. Many thanks for staying tuned. We move on now to health, where the World Health Organization, WHO, and U.S. health authorities have said that they are closely monitoring a new variant of COVID-19. Although the potential impact of BA 2.86 is currently unknown, the WHO classified the new variant as one under surveillance due to the large number of spike gene mutations it carries. Reports say so far the variant has only been detected in Israel, Denmark and the United States. Meanwhile, the U.S. Centers for Disease Control has confirmed it is also closely monitoring the variant. In a message on the social platform X, formerly known as Twitter. Away from that, the National Primary Health Care Development Agency says it is working to urgently stop the transmission of variant poliovirus type 2 by December. The Executive Director of NPHCDA, Dr. Faisal Schweib, made this known during a Northern Traditional Leaders Committee on PHC Delivery strategic meeting with traditional leaders of inaccessible areas in 6 states. According to Dr. Faisal, there are currently 48 reported cases of the disease, stressing that the agency will halt the transmission of the variant by building a stronger routine immunization and PHC system. Let's head over now to Isaac for later sports stories.
Well, thank you very much. In sports, English Premier League side Tottenham and Belgian giants Ghent have begun talks for the transfer of Nigerian striker Gift Orban. The London club have agreed personal terms with the striker as the club continues their research for a replacement for striker Harry Kane, who joined Bayern Munich this summer. Tottenham are desperately in need of a striker and have identified the Nigerian as one of the targets, with Chelsea striker Lukaku also in consideration. While it was reported that an agreement had been reached with the forward, all that was left was a deal to be struck with Ghent for the transfer of the player. Orban, who is 20, whose Ghent contract runs until June 30, 2027, has attracted interest from several European clubs following his impressive debut season when he scored 20 goals in 22 appearances in the previous season. The Nigerian has started his season on a bright note already with 5 goals from 4 games. While traveling to Europe, Thierry Henry is set to become the new France under-20 head coach as he was chosen by the French Football Federation, the FFF. Henry, who left his role as Belgian assistant after the World Cup in Qatar last year, would take over Sylvain Ripoli following France's disappointing display at the Euros this summer, where they were eliminated by Ukraine at the quarterfinals. The Arsenal legend was preferred by Sabri Lamouchi, Jocelyn Guffinich, and Julian Steffen for the job given his status and stellar playing career. Henry won the World Cup at Euros during his playing time and was also part of the squad that reached the 2006 World Cup final, where they lost to Italy on penalties. The 46-year-old has struggled during his short managerial career following unsuccessful spells in charge of Monaco and Montreal. According to sources, Henry took a pay cut to take the new 21 role and is keen to lead them to a gold medal at next year's Olympic Games in Paris, France. Well, moving on to talk transfers, Manchester City's pursuit of West Ham United midfielder Lucas Paqueta has been placed on hold and is in danger of collapsing, according to reports. These citizens have stepped up their interest in the 25-year-old over the past few weeks after completing deals for Mateo Kovacic and Josko Vardiol. Pep Guardiola is in the market for a new midfielder following the departure of Ilkay Gundogan to Barcelona and long-term hamstring injury suffered by Kevin De Bruyne, who is facing up to 4 months on the sidelines. Paqueta was at Man City's radar last summer before he eventually joined West Ham United from Lyon for a club record fee of £51 million, signing a contract until June 2027. The Brazilian international scored 5 goals and had 7 assists in 41 games for the Hammers across all competitions and helped David Moyes' side to win the Europa Conference League last season. But that's it on sports. My name is Isaac.
Many thanks, Isaac. And now on our entertainment news, British-Nigerian singer and songwriter Aziz Fashola, popularly known as Naira Marley, has admonished his fans to abstain from drugs. The singer admonished fans in a video posted on NDLEA's social media account when he paid a courtesy visit to the national headquarters of the National Drug Law Enforcement Agency. In the video, Naira Marley charged Nigerian youths to stop doing drugs as it is harmful to their well-being. The video has since generated massive reactions from ex-users who were shocked to see the Malian president at the NDLEA headquarters. Still on entertainment, the organizers of the Africa Music and Magazine Awards, AFRIMA, have released the 2023 nominees list. Famous Nigerian Afrobeat singer Davido is nominated in 6 different categories, including Song of the Year, Artist of the Year and Album of the Year, followed by Rema and Burna Boy, who grabbed 3 nominations each, while Tiwa Savage, Odumodu Black and Omar Lay earned 2 nominations each. The ceremony is scheduled to be held on September 17 at the monumental Meyerson Symphony Center, Dallas, Texas, USA. And lastly, on entertainment tonight, Film One Studios has announced the huge success of Orisa crossing 100 million naira in gross profit at the local box office. The Odunlade Adekola-led Yoruba epic was released to the theaters on July 21, which makes it 4 weeks since its release. Reports say with its release competing with Hollywood movies Barbie and Oppenheimer, a lot of people had feared it would struggle in theatrical performance, but Orisa raised the bar high and became the highest grossing opening film in Nollywood and the biggest epic of the year 2023. And that's all we have for you at this time. Do ensure to follow us on social media and subscribe to our YouTube channel, all of which you can find on our website, SpectrumTv.ng. You've been watching Spectrum News at 9. My name is Xavier Robert. Do have a terrific weekend. Good night.